evening, and I'm so thrilled to be on this Facebook Live today for News Shuttle, which is a newspaper for kids. I have a kid who is 18 years old, but still, I was really going through all the activities and the kind of information that gets shared via this platform, and I'm feeling a bit sad that this was not available when my girl was smaller. And looking forward to today's session, which is more for the parents. I hope to do a session for the kids also someday. And let me just share my slides. You will not get bored for sure. I just wanted to keep an anchor for the talk that I'm going to do, and hence there are some slides. But it will be a lot of storytelling. That's the format that I usually choose to do my sessions. So that's me, Neeraja Ganesh, and there are two more people there. No guesses. One is my mother and one is my daughter. And the reason I did not put any title against my name, be it professional, or sometimes when I do exclusive sessions for mothers, I say mother of, Sneha Ganesh. The reason I just put it like that today was the topic that we're going to talk about, which is about bringing in a positive mindset, especially for parenting. For me, it comes from the fact that I am a daughter. So I have been parented by my parents and my mother especially. And I'm a parent, a mother to an 18-year-old girl now. So whatever I'm going to be speaking today is from my experiences of having been a parent, and hence the reflections that I have had about my own parents, about the things that they did or didn't do, because of which I am what I am today. So it's not academic research, so it's a lot of experiential sharing. And while I will share experiences, I do not expect you to actually pick up on all those points and go ahead and implement it as is. The reason for the experiential sharing, the storytelling format, is to ensure that you start reflecting on how you have been parenting. And if you have not been able to get certain outcomes from your children, which you really want to, and you kind of tried a few styles and a few strategies, probably the storytelling will make you reflect and want to do things a little differently and see if it gets you to what you want to do. And with that, let me go ahead to actually tell you, just trying to move ahead, yes, that we're going to talk today about positive mindset shift. And as is in the picture, this is what usually comes across when we are as parents and for many others whom we observe. We have an authority because we happen to be parents, an authority on our child, the authority to either reward or to punish. And usually that's what takes over us when we want certain things to be done by our children. And in many ways, this is very similar to how leadership is in organizations. For those of you who have worked, you can draw a parallel between leadership in organizations and parenting for your children, parenting at home. You would have realized that there are some very authoritative leaders who always use their authority to get their way. They will either reward, they will either punish, and they say, I am the boss, and hence I know people will oblige. And sometimes as parents, we kind of wear that hat. Now, is it successful? Is it successful in the long run? It's a question to be answered. The second kind of leadership is democratic, where the leader says, okay, come, let me hear everybody's views, and then we will take everyone along. And sometimes we as parents become democratic to say, okay, let's bring in the entire family to the discussion. Let's hear from our children. Let us explore our viewpoints. A very good style, but is that a style which can be used every time? We'll have to explore. And the third style is where you don't even micromanage. The leader says, go do what you want to. I will just, watch from a distance. Come to me if you're struggling, but otherwise, I give you full freedom. Sometimes as parents, we also do that. But when should that be done? Can we be doing it throughout from whenever the child is born, or should we do it in a particular age group, or should we do it in a particular circumstance? See, there is no good and bad, there is no right or wrong. Each of us, has a particular preferred style which works for us. And again, going back to the disclaimer, I'm not saying that I am the super subject matter expertise on this topic. The only expertise I have is that I have also been a mother and have done a lot of reflection on certain things that have worked and certain things that have not worked, and I've changed course. And hence today's session is all about that. The first and foremost that we all would like to think and wish for our children is that they should stay on the path which we think is the right path. It is a path of certain values that we believe in as individuals, as family, and the path, I'm not talking about path as, what is the course that the child should choose, or, what is the career that the child should choose, who should be the spouse, etc. Not that. It's the right path, the right which is, in our minds. So we definitely want our children to stay on the path. Now, there are two ways to do it, right? You can always put rules, and you can say, you will do this, you will not do this. That is the rule. But does the rule always work? Or should it be values? So let me, give you a little bit of story about myself, and then I'll go on to the story of my daughter. So a few years ago, I went to Paris for my company. I was sent on a senior women's leadership development program. We were about 11 women who were selected across the globe from this organization to attend the senior women's leadership development program. We were 4 of us Indians, so 3 from India, 1 person was from Dubai, and then they were from US and UK and Japan and countries. It was a residential program, so we were put up in what is actually a castle which has been bought by this organization, and they have made it a university of sorts. So it was in the outskirts of Paris. So there was no way that we could go away in the evenings and do the sightseeing or shopping in Paris. So we had to be kind of there in the castle for the 4 days of the program. So the whole day would go in the training, and evenings we would be allowed to kind of have our own time. We were, the food was taken care of. I was so thrilled, it was Indian food, because they had asked us for our dietary restrictions and what kind of cuisine we prefer, and they had kind of catered it exactly like that for each of us. And in the evenings, it was dinner and drinks. So all of us had been given some, number of beer coupons, which we could use. We could, kind of keep getting the number of beer mugs or glasses or bottles, whatever you have, depending on the number of coupons that we were given. Now, I don't drink, so I gave away all my coupons to, the rest of the 10. And all of them were drinking, it didn't matter, the country, whether it's India or abroad, or it didn't matter. So they used my coupons. And of course, the course was great. And then I stayed back for a few days and went around town. And then when I came back, I was narrating this entire story to my mother. And I also spoke about, this a bit about the beer coupons, and I gave it away and I didn't drink. And she asked me, didn't you feel the urge to drink? And I said, at this age, because, I was in my 40s, early 40s. And I said, at this age, why will you have an urge? I mean, if you haven't, usually you say that you will have all these, the peer pressure or the curiosity to explore something which is not part of your regular life. Maybe when you are, much younger, in your teens or in the early 20s or something like that. I just said, not at this age. I mean, there was no such curiosity. I have never done it and I've never wanted to do it. Let me also put another disclaimer. Here, I'm not, going to debate about is the right thing or a wrong thing to drink or not drink and all of that. I'm just saying that this is how I have grown up, and this is what, I believe in. Years later, so last year, in fact, my daughter was in 12th, and I had some cousins who were visiting us from the US. There's a huge age gap between, me and my cousins. So one of the cousins has had a baby just this year. The other one is just married. So you can imagine the generation gap between me and my youngest cousins. So they were visiting us and they were asking me about my daughter who's in 12th and what is it that she would like to do next year? What is she going to pursue and where is she going to join, college? And I said that she's going to be joining in Bangalore. We live in Bangalore, so she's going to be joining in Bangalore, and this is the course that we are looking at. And we were asked this question: why not abroad? Because today everyone seems to be going abroad for undergrad. I said, no, I don't see a point. I don't see a need for her to do undergrad anywhere. We have good courses here in India, in Bangalore, so that's where she's going to do it. And the question that was asked to me by, the lady, my cousin's wife, was that, how did she agree? Because the rest of the world seems to be doing that. I'm sure she'll have friends who are going abroad. Won't she argue? Won't she rebel? And it made me think, I don't think, she rebelled. This was a discussion that we've had, and she was quite okay. And it made me reflect on why is it, that somebody thinks that a child should rebel given the peer pressure, and if the parent thinks differently. Also reflected on what my mother said, didn't you feel like? And she actually made a statement when I said, no, I didn't feel like. She said, okay, I think we brought you up well. You've got the values that we have instilled in you still, alive. So when is it that any of us would go to someone for advice, and what is the kind of person that we would seek out for advice? And I'm not talking about the relationship with the person. I'm just talking about what kind of a person would we go for advice? I think most of us would go to someone who's more experienced than us, who is a subject expert, who knows, in and out about the subject that we want to seek advice on. So if you look at my daughter, who's actually, making a choice of going to the college, the person with whom she's engaged and had discussions to decide whether she should choose a college in our country or abroad is definitely her parents and me, because I have been someone who's been working through the 25 years. And through these, years when my daughter has been growing up, we've had conversations about the way we hire in companies. I'm not saying that, we set up time every day and have this chit chat, but during the day, we speak about each other's, day, how it has been. And on the days that I would have been doing some interviews or looking at some CVs, etc. Just look at that. I always tell my daughter, look at this. This was the kind of a CV that came. And how do I differentiate between, 10 CVs that come? Because everyone has done, the course from a very good college, could be here, could be abroad, has got extremely good marks. But what differentiates the person is probably the extra, activities that they have done. So I actually refer to one of the CVs which had me impressed. This was a fresh graduate who had put in her CV everything about the debates that she had done. And I said, this is a person that I'll definitely interview, because I believe her communication skills would be fantastic, given that, she's been a very good debater. We've had conversations of that sort. I have also went on to head a not-for-profit foundation for women who are seeking careers, either career after taking a break, or they have been in careers and they're looking to change. And I've had exposure of mentoring them and telling them how is it that they should prepare themselves and how should they differentiate between themselves and the other person via their CV during their interview to get the job. And I also today am in this job, which is at National College here in Bangalore, where I build the Industry Academia Connect, which means that I totally understand what the industry needs, and we kind of are facilitating that for the students via our curriculum so that the students become job ready the minute they finish college. So my daughter knows that if I am suggesting something, if I am having a particular opinion, then it comes from the aspect of my experience and my expertise, and hence she may not necessarily rebel and argue. She may ask me a few questions, but she'll definitely be guided by me. But if there was something else, like for example, it's the kind of clothes that she wants to pick for an event, either at college or say a farewell party or something like that, I was thinking whether she'll come to me, because I don't have a great fashion sense. I'm still old-fashioned in that manner. So you'll always see me in saris, or you'll probably see me in a salwar, and that's about it. But my daughter, of course, wears other kinds of clothes. It could be Western, it could be Indian, and all the fusion and stuff like that. Will she come to me? May not be, because she realizes that I am not up to date with the current trends of fashion. But I know that when she goes and chooses some clothing for herself, she will base it on the values that we have instilled in her. So she will know that there are certain things which are okay for the family, there's other things which are not okay, and she will make a choice based on that. Exactly like, my mother who said, oh, did you feel like drinking? And, looks like, the values that we have instilled is still there. You cannot have a rule book for everything for your child. You could probably, drop 100 rules, 200 rules, but you never know what and what kind of environment your child will be tomorrow when you're not around with him or her, or what tomorrow is going to, throw upon the child. So my mother couldn't have had a rule book to say, if you travel to Paris and if you're offered drinks, don't drink it. But what will stand by is the values. And once the values are there, they will automatically ensure that the rules are the kind of rules that you would have framed if you had to frame them. So please ensure that you have the right values instilled. And to instill the values, you have to, what you call as, walk the talk. You have to be seen as following those values. So a lot of people come and tell me, what, my child always goes and shops at, the most fancy of malls and buys only the most expensive of, belts. Like somebody said a belt for 3,500 rupees. And I said, really? A belt for 3,500 rupees? But then how can you argue the case? Because the parent is also shopping in the same mall and is probably buying the same kind of expensive clothes, probably driving the same kind of expensive bikes and cars, then the child is going to follow suit. So if you want the child to do something which you believe and you are giving the gyan to the child that these are the right values, you please reflect to see whether you are following it yourselves. In their presence and outside of their presence also. You can't be someone, in front of them and someone outside of them or behind them. So that's the first thing that, I would like to say in terms of getting a mindset shift. The second thing that I want to talk about is coaching and training. So all of us understand training. We kind of, take classes and we learn how to do things. We also understand mentoring, I believe. So we go to a mentor when we want advice on something. The first example itself, I was talking about who do you seek advice from. But what is coaching? And here is a picture of a coach, right? Usually we associate coaches with sports because there's a sports coach. What's the difference between coaching and training? A coach is never going to tell you, do this, don't do this. The coach makes you reflect upon situations and makes you decide what actions to take. And today we have coaches, all over. We have fitness coaches and we have life coaches, we have career coaches. The terminology coach is very, very powerful. So the minute you don't train your child to do something, but you move to a coaching standpoint. Just like I said, I'm going to narrate stories. Doesn't mean you pick something from that and try to implement. I wish you to reflect upon your own style of parenting based on this and make the changes that you wish to make, if you have to make changes. Why is it powerful? Because once the child is reflected based on the coaching that you do. And even leaders, today in organizations, we ask them to be coaches. We ask them to make the employee reflect and then decide on the actions. Because the minute it is that individual's action, he or she is going to own it and will deliver on that. So again, let me give you an example from, my own child. When she was much younger, I think in the first standard, you have all these chart work that is done in school, right? So for any kind of an assignment, any kind of a lesson, you are asked to create charts. The child is asked to create charts. It might be more fancy today, I don't know, because my daughter finished school years ago. Invariably, it will be the parents who will be making the charts for the kids because you want the chart to be the very best. So you'll bring in all your creativity and you'll bring your uniqueness and you'll create that, either the chart or the project or whatever is, has been asked. You may get the child to sit next to you, but it's mostly the, parents who are doing it. Because at the end of the day, the teacher will probably choose the 3 best charts and hang them up. Because if you have a class of 30 kids, you can't hang up all the charts. So they may choose 3 or 5 best and hang it for that one. And then the next chart comes in. So I was also a mother like that till about first standard. I used to sit and I used to be really, really creative and do things very differently. I remember there was a library project that she had to do to kind of get the kids interested in library and books. They used to have a small book, a library book that the child had to take to the library. The book that the child reads either in the library or brings home, the child had to make notes, either pick up some difficult words or write a synopsis of the story that they have read. So that's a way to kind of engage the child and make the child read. And the first activity they gave was decorate this book, nicely. And whoever decorates is best, we'll give a gift or we'll give a book as a, gift or something like that. And I remember having picked up, the Sapna Book House, cover that you get, which had all the authors written on it and, covering the book like that. So I've done all of that. When she came to the second standard, I went and spoke to the teacher and said, from this year, I'm not going to do any charts myself. All charts, all projects are going to be done by my daughter herself. Which means that the quality might not be that great, okay, because the child is still learning. But I told the teacher, you must ensure that her chart is also picked up and put on the wall. Because I want the child to be encouraged. It should not be that, she is trying and it's in whatever way it comes up, but, she doesn't see her chart on the, wall month 1, month 2, month 3, and then she will give up. So I had that conversation with the teacher. And the teacher agreed. So from second standard, I let her do it. So she would cut it, and whether it's rightly, wrongly, she would use her creativity and she did her stuff. How did that help? As years went by the time she came to 9th standard, there is, you have a lot of projects that you do as part of whatever curriculum you follow, CBSE curriculum and all of that. They have, I think, 20 marks for projects. And there are individual projects and there are group projects. The teacher used to give these group projects and she used to make one person a leader and there'll be 4 or 5 people in the group. And the mandate would be that the leader has to make sure that every child in the group will participate in the project. It can't be that 3 people do and the 2 just stand. And she said, I will find out whether everyone has participated because you will have to tell me when you present the project, you will have to tell me who did what. And based on what you claim the person has done, I will further quiz the person. So you can't just, say that, yeah, everyone has worked. And I could see the leadership that my daughter used to exhibit. She would get someone to go buy the chart. She would tell someone to, decide on the color of the chart or the tape that has to be used. Certain people she knew were good at writing, so they would be given only writing work. Some others were good at, Googling and, getting content from the internet. Some were able to, kind of make it more concise. So each one got, a particular role in the project. And I used to ask her, why this person, you're just sending him to buy the chart and nothing else, chart paper, nothing else. It's just a simple job for him while all of you are taking more difficult jobs. And she said, the idea is simple. The idea is that everyone needs to contribute. And the minute you make the person contribute in a manner that he or she feels good about, they will further go on to do more and more. So if I'm starting off by saying this boy go and buy the chart paper because he's not interested in anything else, at least he feels part of the project, he's come and contributed in some way. And then he sees the rest of the group doing what they are doing. And hence, when the final presentation happens, he will be able to speak something about why did he choose this kind of a chart color or, what struggles he had in, getting the chart or cutting the chart or whatever. And he will also get his due marks. And all of us together as a team will also get our due marks. And that was such a beautiful thing that, she said. And she said, and she used to come and tell me that people now, she would always be marked as the leader for any of the group projects. But she would come and tell me, people really want to become part of my group because they have seen that I actually allocate responsibilities to everyone based on, what they are good at. So I think reflecting back on how all of this happened is because you have allowed the child to do something when the child was young, and the child has learned because of that. The child has made mistakes and nobody has, punished. It's not looking that great doesn't mean the chart is thrown away. That also has a place. And over a period of time, she has excelled at it to such an extent that she could, actually become lead for all the project work and get the entire team to, perform well. So coaching is an absolute must when it comes to using a coaching methodology rather than a tell methodology, a train methodology, a teach or a preach methodology. It is very, very important to make the child self-sufficient, learn from mistakes and grow. The next thing that I would always go big on is responsibility. And I say make your children responsible from as young as they can be. Now you're going to ask me, what is that young? Is it 5? Is it 3? Is it 2? Well, I have a story to narrate, which I will not because of, paucity of time, of, making my child responsible at the age of 2. Because I put her in a preschool and I ensured that she used to have her breakfast all by herself before she went to school. Because you can imagine for working parents, mornings are going to be so very hectic. Sitting down with a 2-year-old child to feed breakfast for 45 minutes is something that is not going to happen. So I had made her responsible enough to have her own breakfast, but that's a story for another day. Let me narrate another story because I understand that parents in this community are usually having children between, the ages of 8 to 12 or something like that. Anyways, even if you have younger children or older children, you will have something, to derive from this story. So in school, and being a working mother, I wouldn't be that frequent at school. I would just go for the PTM. I wouldn't be able to go every other day to meet the teacher or, hang around with the other mothers there. When she came to UKG, I saw, so all the notes, anything that parents had to take note of would come through the diary, right? And I saw the diary note which said that she's got exams after 1 week. And I was really freaking out. UKG and what is this exam? So I went to school and I asked the teacher, how is this exam going to be? Because they were doing, I think, those rhyming words that year, like the at words, the bat words and all of that. And they were learning how to count. So I said, how is the exam going to be? Is it oral? She said, no, there will be oral, there will be written, and it's not going to be very simple, write 3 rhyming at words. It's going to be really checking if the child has understood. So it might be a fill in the blank which says, fill in the blank, the cat sat on the dash. And the dash has to be filled with a word which rhymes with cat. And it also makes sense in that sentence, right? So you can say cat sat on a mat, but not cat sat on a pat or something. I just think, does the child even know all of this? And they said, yeah, the children will know, don't worry. But me being a mother who really wanted the child to perform well in whatever she is doing, so there was 1 week, they had given off 1 week. I took my daughter, I went to my mother's place who lives in the same city, and I prepared all these question papers for her, and I gave it to my mother and said, while I'm at her work, give this 1 paper every day and let her answer. Time it, let her answer. I'll come in the evening and check what she's done. So that's how the saga of preparing question papers for my daughter's exam started. I'm sure many of you also will be following that. When she came to first standard, I now knew exactly that there'll be tests every other month. So I would prepare these question papers, make her answer that. Now, how do you prepare question papers? I was quite naive. So I used to take the questions, the fill in the blanks, everything behind the lesson and any notes that has come. And from that, I would make 1 question paper. And the first standard first test happened. And you don't get these papers home, right? Because they're called like worksheets. So you will have the questions also in the same and the answers have to be written beside it and teacher will keep it with them. So you don't get them home. You get to know your marks and on the day of the PTM and you will be given, the papers to look at. So I saw the marks were great. Like she got 30 on 30 in English. So I said, yeah, I think my method of preparing question papers seems to have worked. And when I looked at her worksheet, I saw that not a single question, fill in the blank, match the following, whatever it be, was from either the backside of the lesson or from the notes. It was all from within the lesson. And this girl has still answered it. So which means that the children are very attentive in class and the way the class is being taught is extremely good. But what it did to me was going forward, I actually had to read the entire lesson to frame the question papers. So I did that method I did it first, second, third standard, and I would make her write also the answers, because I would say, she would come home by 4, the question paper would be there, she would answer, I would come home by 6:30, look at the answers. If there is something, wrong or she's not aware of, then we'll sit down and only, work on that particular thing. Can't be, studying the whole thing with her. And writing was a good method to ensure there is speed and there is good handwriting and all of that. But as years went by, this was becoming more and more exhaustive. How much can I read, the lessons, and then create how many kinds of question papers can you create? So by the time she came to 4th, I told her, you will prepare your own question papers. And by the time she came to 5th, I said, leave the fact that, you have to write answers, because that was also becoming very, elaborate. I said, you prepare your own question papers. And when you're preparing the question papers, you're anyway going through the lesson. So now you know how to study, because when somebody is going through the lesson, will know what kind of a question could come from this paragraph, because that's what is going on in the child's mind while the child is preparing a question paper. And then by 6th and 7th standard, I had let go. I said, you will study the way you have to. I may just, check on you a day before the exam. Randomly, I will ask you some questions. That first year when I let her go completely, without me, checking on her at all, was such a struggle. I remember she had got about 4 or 5 days to prepare for an Hindi test, which had 2 lessons. And one whole day was over and she said, I have not yet completed 1 lesson, because she was not getting that, feeling that I have done enough, because there is no one else to come and ask me and, validate that I have done. Anyways, she overcome all of that. And by the time she came to 10th, of course, she was on her own for 8th, 9th, 10th itself. Now, I had not let go of maths, but everything else she was on her own. When she came to 10th, the whole world was asking me whether, I'm going to take the year off, because 10th is such a, very crucial year. And I said, what will I do if I take the year off from work? Because she's on her own, right? There's nothing that I can do. So I didn't. Then as the exams were coming closer, I was asked, are you going to take, the time during the exams, you will take a break and be at home with your child. And I still couldn't understand what will I do sitting at home. So I asked my daughter, do you want me to take time off during the exams? She said, I'll let you know. Now, I still remember the date, 23rd March, her 10th boards were going to start. 21st March, I was in Mumbai for an event. Of course, she by then had told Ma, it will be good if you are at home during the exams. But I had still not made up my mind whether I'm going to take leave or I'm going to work from home, because I didn't know what I would do sitting at home, right, for that 3 weeks of exams. So I'd still not made up my mind. Anyway, 21st, I went for the event. Came back 22nd, early morning by 2 o'clock. So I didn't go to work on 22nd. And on 22nd, I noticed some rashes on my leg. I noticed it in Mumbai itself. And I thought it's some, must be the heat rashes or something, because it was quite hot and we were, roaming the streets of Mumbai. But by the time it was 8 o'clock in the night, I don't know what prompted me. I went to the doctor to show her those rashes. And she told me this is herpes. And I said, for those of you who don't know herpes, it's a variant of chickenpox. And she said, this is infectious. And I said, my daughter has her board exam starting tomorrow. She said, don't be around her because she can catch it. I just came home. I packed my bags. I told my daughter, see, this is what has happened. You said that be around during your exams, but now the situation is that I can't be at home also. Forget the leave, forget the work from home. I just can't be physically there at home. So I'm going away for the 3 weeks to my mother's house, which is also in Bangalore. And she said, okay, Ma, you take care of yourselves, we'll take care of ourselves. So of course, I had my mother-in-law and my husband was there and I have a cook. So, all of that was taken care of. But the fact that the child is in the 10th standard and I'm not around and she's studying on her own. Long story short, she topped the class, she topped the school. And, she still says, maybe Ma, it's because you were not around. The point I'm trying to make here is the point of responsibility. Because of the way I kind of, got her to start studying the question paper pattern and then, doing her own question papers, and then I let go. She was in a position to do whatever she had to do in an unfortunate situation like that because I wasn't around. If I had still kind of held on and say, I want to check, whether you've studied, your answers are correct or not correct, I think she would have been a big soup when this had happened, because my husband doesn't, involve himself, anything in any lessons, anything at all. It was completely me. right? So that is why build in responsibility in your children as early as you can. It can be as early as 2. And many more stories of responsibility that I can, talk about, but another day. The fourth thing that I do want to tell is don't indulge your children. What is indulge? What is indulgence? Right? When you, not necessarily when you give in, but you want to give the best to your child. All parents want to give the best to their child, for sure. But is giving the best every time at every occasion the right thing? So again, let me give you a story of my daughter when she came to 2nd standard. She came one day home and she said, there are some exams that are going to happen in school. There are 3 exams actually, and we have to pay for these exams. It is 100 rupees per exam, 300 rupees. Everybody in the class is writing all the exams. I also want to write these exams. So I was very curious what this is, and then I looked at the note in the diary which spoke about Olympiads. I'm sure parents know about Olympiads. Now I have never written Olympiads. I don't know whether it existed in my days, and I didn't know anything about it. So I googled and I realized that these are really standard exams. And if someone wants to write, whether you're in 2nd or 10th, you have to be really across your portions or the curriculum, and you have to have a bent of mind to be able to understand the question, and it's more practical implementation kind of questions that come in, so it's not straightforward. So I looked at it and I told her, I think let's do 1 exam this year. And she said, okay. And I said, we'll do maths. Because 1, it was the last of the 3, so you get more time to prepare. And 2nd, I'm a maths person. So I would be able to, teach her math. While the curriculum is still what is happening in the school, but the school was going a little slow on maths because they wanted the basic fundamentals to be ingrained in the children before they kind of get on with bigger things. So I had to actually teach almost every other lesson for her to prepare for this exam, and I did that. From the day, I think it was June, July, when we paid up the fees, which was 50 rupees for the booklet and 50 rupees for exam. Maybe today it's much more. Till January, when the actual exam happened, every day we spent half an hour preparing. During Navratri, also, 10 days of holidays, we in South India, we keep this Golu during Navratri. We have a lot of people visiting home. We go and visit others. Didn't matter. It didn't matter Saturday, Sunday, holiday. Every day, half an hour preparation for this exam. And then the exam got over in January. I still remember my husband coming home on the day the exam was over and telling me, I'm glad it's over. At least now I won't have to hear as I'm walking in, if 1 papaya costs 5 rupees, how much will 10 papayas cost? So that was 2nd standard. In 3rd standard, again, they had the Olympiads. Now, imagine what the child would have said. In 2nd standard, she came and told me, I want 300 rupees. Everyone is writing 3 exams. I want money. In 3rd standard, she said something different. She said, Ma, which exam shall we write this year? So I said, okay, let's do maths and we will do cyber, which is like computers. I don't know if that's what it's called still, because it's 50% maths and 50% computers. And then we went on. By the time she came to 5th, it had become a regular thing, right? Every year writing Olympiads. I told her, why don't you? And she was pretty much on her own. I wouldn't be sitting half an hour every day. She would be practicing and she would come to me if there was something she couldn't get a hand on. I told her, why don't you do science also? Anyway, it's part of your curriculum. You don't have to prepare, just go write and we'll see what marks you get. You know what she said? And by that time, it had become 200 rupees. 100 rupees for the book and 100 rupees for the entrance, the fee itself for the exam. She said, Ma, I would rather spend the 200 rupees on something more worthwhile. Because I know I'm not good at science and I'm not interested in it. I don't want to spend the time and the money on something like that. This is the indulgence that I'm talking about. Because I've seen a lot of parents who come, because they want, the rest of the world is doing the Olympiads, the rest of the world is doing XYZ, and hence I also want my child to do. And the child never understands the value of it. There have been parents who have told me, I didn't even know today was the Cyber Olympiad. They paid up the money and the child has gone and written and got some marks and come. So the child will never understand the meaning of an exam, the meaning of hard work and all of that. Here, because I was ensuring that if you are writing an exam, you will prepare for it. You will just not okay. And the preparation has to be adequate. So there is a simple mantra that I have, right? I'm not saying that you have to, ace. You have to be the first. But my mantra is, You have to be the best at whatever you do. Maybe the best will, get you the 100th rank or the 1000th rank. It's okay. But you have to still do your very best, which means you have to put in your best effort. So my daughter understands that writing an exam means spending time preparing, and she understands the value of 100, 200 rupees equal to spending so many hours of preparation, and she is able to evaluate whether it is worth it or not worth it. So do not indulge your child because the rest of the world is doing it, or you want the very best for your child. You have to kind of also get the child to understand the value of everything. Here, my daughter understood the value of 200 rupees, and not by me giving yarn about 200 rupees cost so much. By, her having gone through the journey of actually working on an exam, and she understands the value of 200 rupees because of that. And the last thing that I would say for today is make the child visualize their goals. And it's a big word, goals. But I think for the child, all of us have certain goals. And then, we have to figure out whether these are the same goals that the child also has. A simple goal like you have to get good marks, because without getting good marks, you don't get admission to a good college. If no good college, then no good job, no good job, no good money, no good money, no good life, right? I think it's a standard mantra all of us have. Does the child understand what is the meaning of a good college? All of us know the difference between, the so-called good college, better college, best college, and not so great college. But I don't think our children even understand that, because they have only seen the good schools and good colleges that we are sending our children to. So they don't understand what is not so good. So my daughter, of course by now you know that she's been a good student and getting good marks through and through. Till the sixth standard, she used to be the topper in the class. And the school used to give them a star badge to, recognize the topper. So every test, whoever is the topper would get the star badge, which you can pin up on your shirt, and it will be there on your shirt till, the next test. Before the start of the next test, they will remove it away, and whoever tops the next test will get that star badge. And my girl always had it on her, because every test she used to top till 6th. Come 7th, she missed the star badge. Now, she might have been good. There might have been another child who got better than her. But the thing was that she was actually going down in marks. And I could see it. I could see that, the marks were, coming down. And like any other mother, and especially those who are, project managers, you will sit down to analyze what went wrong. And you will, have, these analysis and the results of the analysis, which you put up on the wall. When it is math exam, you will ensure that you will do all of this. These formulae should always be there on the walls, because you have to always keep looking at it and remember it. In social studies, this is how you do it. So, that's the same way I also did. The walls were all plastered with analysis of what went wrong, so that for the next test, you will not repeat these mistakes. Next test came, marks went further down. Now, it wasn't as if, my daughter was not studying, because she's a girl who's very interested and she also wants the best. She also wants good marks. But something was not working. And I also couldn't understand what was that something. And we used to continue after every test, analyze why you've not done well, where are the mistakes, put up those charts on the walls to say, okay, next test ke liye you have to prepare this way. But the marks didn't improve. The whole 7th went, it was further going down, down, down. 8th, down, down, down. The very last test of 8th standard, she had scored 72%. Now, it's not a bad score by itself, but this is a girl who used to score like 95%. And all the teachers were, making it out that something is wrong, what is wrong, any extra pressure you're putting on the child, is something wrong and all of that. So we came out of the PTM last test ke baad, and she was expecting to come home, do the same kind of analysis, have more charts on the wall. But I changed my strategy. I didn't go home. I took her and I went to a school nearby. Not a school, I can't say a school for underprivileged, but it was not like the best of the schools, right? And I said, you go in and talk to the office and ask them what is the cutoff marks that they will need to give admission for 11th standard. she also didn't understand this question. The school didn't understand the question. Anyway, we tried to make them understand because no one has asked the school, like, any child who passes gets admission in that school. It's that kind of school. Finally, they said 50% or above, you will get admission. I said, oh, wow, Sneha, I mean, with your 72, I'm sure you'll get admission here. And she said, I don't want to study in this school because she had seen the kids, the kind of uniforms they had, the kind of hair they had to kind of, put into pigtails. They were speaking vernacular, not English, and she comes from this fancy school which has these short skirts and hair can be done in a particular manner, only English speaking. And this is not a school that I want to study in. And I said, well, with your 72%, I don't know how many other schools will give you admission. And then we went to all the other colleges in Bangalore, and those of you who are in Bangalore might have heard of some of these college names. We went to Mount Carmel. There's a college where Deepika Padukone studied. They said 90% is the cutoff. We went to National College. Some colleges said 75%. And finally, we went to this college, which is called Christ College, which is quite well known across the country. She looked at Christ and she said, Ma, this is where I want to study. I said, okay, let's go and ask the same question to the office. We went to the office. The office said, 98% and above, we can talk. Okay, we can talk. She said, Ma, I want to study here. I said, well, you know the answer, 98%. Came back. That's it. I didn't do anything after that. I didn't, see how she was preparing. There was no analysis. There was no charts. There's nothing on the wall. 9th standard, first test, she got 98%. Okay. Now, through the year, of course, it would have become a 96 and 94 and 92 and then a 98 and all of that. But what the point I'm trying to make is, now she has a goal of her own. When we are talking about a good college, she's not able to understand what is a good college. And when she has seen 3 other colleges, different kinds of colleges, she's seen the infrastructure, she's seen the building, she's seen the crowd that is coming, she's seen the syllabus that is there, and she understands that this is the college I want to go. Now, she has made it her goal. To get into this college is her goal, and no one can help her but herself. So she did whatever she had to kind of get those marks. So visualization of the goal is very, very important. I will end this quickly with another story of hers where, of course, she didn't go and join, Christ in 11th because there was a particular combination she was looking for, which was not there in that college. So we went to another college. Right now, undergrad, she has gone to Christ. But in this other college that she went to for 11th and 12th, there was another thing that happened to her, right? In school, while she got back her marks, she was at the top. She was not an all-rounder, so she didn't do much in sports. So there is, this thing of student of the year that they give in 10th and, some schools give, some colleges give. So she didn't get that. She was eyeing that. She didn't get it because she was not an all-rounder. She was not into sport and all of that. She made it a goal that in 12th, she will get that. And she worked through the 2 years and, ensured that she participated in sports, she participated in whatever else, and of course studies and all of that. And in 12th, she got the student of the year. There was no pressure from us. We didn't say you have to become the student of the year. We didn't say it in 10th, we didn't say it in 12th. But it is the child's goal because the child is able to visualize it. The minute the child visualizes whatever goal, either it is yours and you want the child to take it forward, or the child, speaks that this is what I want to do, make the child visualize it and hence be able to take the actions towards those goals. So that's what I have for today, and I'll be very, very happy to take questions and look at the Facebook Live to see if there have been questions. Power of vision boards, of course. Value indulgence. Consistency in parenting efforts makes a lot of difference. Love the choice of slides and the presentation. Message is absolutely well explained. Thanks, Shweta. Do we have questions from parents or anyone else who's been watching us? I am not able to see all the comments here. Is it a good idea to ask child to make a vision board, Sayali? Why not? I mean, definitely. It's and I'm not saying when I say that visualize your goal. Vision board might be a very scientific way of doing it, and I'm not saying that's what you have to do. In my example, all I did was just kind of make the child actually see what a college is and different kinds of colleges and so-called good, so-called not so good. And for the child herself to feel what kind of a college do I want to study. And that's why I'm so very happy that despite the fact that in 9th, she had in her head that she wants to go to this Christ college and she worked for it 9th and 10th and she did get her marks, 96% she got. She didn't go to that college because by then she realized that it is the choice of subjects that is more important than the college itself. And this college didn't give her those subjects. And so she chose another college to go to. So I think, the minute the goals become clearer, so for her, college was one goal, but the subjects also were another goal. That is another story in terms of how for a school topper, science topper, usually you end up going into a competitive exam to go to engineering or a medicine. My daughter has not done that. So she got a 94% in 12, a science student. She's taken a BSc Maths, Statistics, Computer Science because she wants to pursue data science. And, this is also another exercise that we went through to say, should it be engineering? If not engineering, we will do something which is more relevant to the course that you want to pursue. What is the passion that you have? Because the minute you pursue what is your passion, automatically the results will come. So that's another thing. Do not thrust your own dreams and desires on the child, but try and get from the child what he is interested in. So vision board is a great thing, but I don't think you have to even go that far. I would like to hear more from you, Ms. Ba. Thank you for sharing the experiences and wonderful parenting tips. Thank you. Keeping age of child 10 to 13 years. Would you give one tip on handling peer pressure? Example, buying brands, following trends. The first thing is, of course, for the parents, are they also succumbing to peer pressure? Their own peers as well as, their child's peers. I remember, when Sneha was much younger, we bought a cycle for her. Why? Because her own classmate, and I'm talking about like first standard or something, her own classmate was seen taking a cycle in front of our house. And my husband said, oh my God, if she can, and she has a cycle, we should have a cycle for our daughter. And we bought this, and my girl is a little tall, so we bought a much taller cycle, still saying that she can use it, for the next few years to come. Now, buying a cycle is not good enough, right? Someone has to run with her on the cycle also. And who is that someone? It had to be me. And we used to sit in the first floor. We used to keep the cycle in the first floor. Every day we had to bring it down and then, keep her on the cycle. And, I had to run behind her. And I did this for a few days and then I gave up on it because I didn't have the strength and stamina. So the cycle sat there for years together and finally we sold it off. So my daughter still doesn't know cycling. But that was succumbing to peer pressure. Right? So I think the parents first succumb to peer pressure and then the children do. So for me, I think by now we have realized, that there are certain things that we value. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world values. And I've given you enough examples of it, right? Where do we go and buy stuff? How do we travel? What are the kind of holidays we take? What kind of restaurants do we go and eat? Or, what kind of company we keep? So what if somebody else, is having that? I think if you are contented with what you have, I think it rubs off on the child. So that's one. I would really urge the parents not to succumb to any peer pressure from their own peers and the children's. And of course, if the child is still struggling, and I know my girl also would have. I remember where the minute teenage struck, it's all the girls, wearing these kinds of clothes and having cut hair and all of that, when we come from a very conservative family. So there has been a lot of talk. It's been a lot of conversation, Please, I don't believe in this quality time, quantity time. You just have to give time. Sometimes you need hours, sometimes a few minutes is enough. And you have to assess it based on what the children are going through in whatever phase they are in. So I have given, the 7th and 8th, I told you, right, have been very, very difficult years. Not only for the marks, but in general, because I think that was the transformational age for her. And I used to be at loggerheads with her. Those 2 years were very, very difficult because I was also in a very high pressure job. Would come home late in the evening and then after that, have work to be done. I would bring office work home. And my daughter also, was had all these, studies and projects and Olympiads and all of that to do. So between the two of us, we didn't have time to converse. So it would be like, she will come and tell me something, I want to do this, and I would say, no, this is not the right thing to do. Maybe 5 minutes, both of us would try to explain things to each other. After that, we have lost patience. And I would be the authoritative parent to say, no, I'm saying it, this is it. 2 years, very, very difficult. But I knew that I had to correct this. So after 8th, when she had this 3-month long vacation, I also kind of, took some time off. And you don't have to go anywhere away to spend time with your child. Like people say, oh, let's take a long holiday. Nothing. We were at home, 3 months at home. But we had all the time in the world where we sat and spoke. So I let her speak about whatever she wanted to speak. And after, so give her 1 hour if she wants to speak 1 hour. After she's done with all her download, then I would, kind of talk about my thoughts on what she is thinking and my perspectives if they are very different to hers. So in the 3 months, what was realizing is that there's a better empathy towards each other. We understand from where each of us is coming from. And today we have a relationship where, although we fight, I'm not saying we don't fight, we don't argue, there will be days when we will be back and stuff like that. But we understand when she understands when I'm very serious about something. If I say this is not interesting, now she understands why, from where am I coming. And there are many times when I understand that I think this really means something for her, and I kind of simply go ahead and make it. So it's those conversations that are required to ensure that they don't feel the need to succumb to peer pressure. But most important, parents should not actually look at them. Then you talk to the children to ensure that they realize that they are good as they are. They don't need to have to you should have your own examples then to kind of see. So we have also instilling self-belief is the best thing parents can do to their children. So I'm thinking that there may not be more questions, and we are also close to time. So thank you for being a good audience, and I hope this has been useful. Anyway, the live is going to be available, the recording is going to be available on the page, and I will also come and look at the page in case there are questions which I have not answered. Thank you, News Chanchu, for being this great platform for kids. And really thank you for the opportunity to address your community.